The next story, and no spoiler, Stan, because Game of Thrones season, I don't even know what season we're in now, but the next season starts up this Sunday. So I'm a big fan of it, and I don't want you to, tell us any secrets, even though it has nothing to do with it other than the name. So the Direwolf campaign, I guess, is a new malware campaign out there, and Direwolf for Game of Thrones people it's a direwolf. It's a kind of wolf that appears. John, you're our Jon Snow today, because you're bringing us the direwolf. Anybody who watches Game of Thrones will understand that, but nobody else will.
Well, you had me lost a little bit because I don't watch Game of Thrones. I heard it's a great show, so maybe I should start watching it. In this campaign, actually, so it's a paper by IBM. So it's a great, they have a PDF document that we're going to give you a link to. And they have like an overarching high-level overview as well. That describes this malware campaign. It's malicious software that I think has been discussed in the past, but just the technique that was used is very interesting. To start, you get a spearfish that contains the Upatre malware.
Now, is it a spearfish or just a kind of fish, general fish?
I guess they call it spearfish, but I guess it could be any kind of fish. The thing that they did concentrate on in this article to describe this campaign, they did talk about specific types of people who were targeted, people who have access to accounts, bank accounts with large sums of money that usually do a lot of transactions and things like that. So in a way, I guess you could classify that as spear phishing because it's targeted. But in any case, you get this malware fish, and it contains the Upatre malware. And once you have that installed and it runs for a little bit, you get another component, which is this Dyre malware, or I think some people call it Dyreza.
Right.
And that's where the Direwolf, I guess, campaign comes from. So once you get that malware, it's pretty well known as a banking Trojan type malware. What it does is I guess it has a couple of tricks up its sleeve, but one of the tricks that it has is it sits in your browser. So like if you use Firefox or Internet Explorer, it works as a plugin into that, and it intercepts all of the communications you have with like your banking websites or your social media accounts, anything that would be encrypted with SSL or anything or anything really, any website you visit that is of interest to the attackers. So they won't just look at any old thing. They really were interested in banking information. So if you visit a website that they're interested in,
and is that like via some kind of config file or something?
Yeah, they have some sort of configuration.
Okay.
I think the article mentioned something like 100 or more banks that these guys were interested in.
Zeus would do the same kind of thing, the old Zeus Trojan that people are familiar with. Okay,
exactly.
Go on. Sorry to interrupt.
No, of course. So what happens is as you visit the page, the malware actually might change the content of the page that's returning back to you. Mm-hmm. So if you go to the banking website, you try to log in, they might send you back something else. And this is also not a new technique. This technique has been around for a long time. What's interesting here, what I thought was interesting, is if your bank that you bank with is on their list, what's going to happen is they're going to return to you a page that says something like, our site is undergoing maintenance, but if you'd like to complete your transaction, here's a 1-800 number that you can call that will let you complete the transaction. So the victims call, and they're social engineered basically. So a lot of these transactions they require, because they're, I guess, a lot of money, it's maybe two-factor or some kind of special authentication measures. And so you're basically working through this third party who's probably doing that on the other hand. On the other side, he's actually logging into your bank legitimately, or I guess illegitimately, and conducting a transaction. And so they could, I think in the article they mentioned like anywhere between $500,000 to $1.5 million that they would then extract from your account right after you hung up the phone. They would do some kind of I guess the bad guys know how to do this, money laundering kind of thing, where they
money mules
send
and whatnot.
your money out to a whole bunch of places, and then it comes back and spins around. I don't know how those things work, but eventually the bottom line is you lose your money. And another thing they mentioned in this article is that they'll also hit your organization or you with a DOS attack or a DDoS attack. So kind of like misdirect you away from the issue. So while you're dealing...
After they've done this transfer.
After they've done the
whatever.
transfer. So while you're dealing possibly with this DOS or DDoS attack, then you're possibly not paying attention right away to this other issue of your banking transactions going into the wrong place. And I know earlier you mentioned that a trick like this had been used in the past.
Well, a variation of that. So basically, this one's an even more different variation because we've talked a lot about these man-in-the-middle types of things. Zeus would do this too, but what Zeus was doing is when you go visit your banking website, it might ask for your login ID and your password, but the Zeus Trojan would insert another form field in there that says you got to put your social security number in too or something. And then they would collect that. They would harvest this extra information that the bank really didn't have on its login form, but they're modifying it. This Dyre wolf is interesting, or Dyre is interesting because what you're saying is instead of trying to even add form fields or whatnot, they just, when you go to visit your banking website, they give you a page that says, hey, the bank's temporarily down. If you need support, call us at this number. And now they're getting you on the phone. People tend to think that a phone is more trustworthy if they're talking to a human being as opposed to a computer, I guess. I don't trust anybody. So if you're on the phone, especially if I'm told by my bank to call, I don't know.
It's a little hard to tell these days because I often do a lot of banking after hours, and that's usually when the maintenance period is.
Have system maintenance.
And they usually tell you, hey, your transaction cannot be completed at this time. If you have any questions, call this number. And this is exactly that kind of situation. And I mean, when you call support, they could be anywhere, and we're kind of used to that as well. With outsourcing and things like that, they don't always have to be where you think they are. And so if you call somebody, and I don't know how these people, what kind of, where they really come from or how they interview you. But
yeah, I'm wondering how good of a natural English language they speak. If they sound like, I'm talking to somebody that is in the U.S.
Or Peggy from USA Prime Credit.
Right. Right, but it'd probably be pretty easy to fool somebody, especially you're making them call you. So it's not, you didn't cold call them or you didn't insert anything. This person is legitimately interested in doing this transaction. They're calling you. They already feel safe and secure that they're talking to the bank. Because how else would I get this phone
They
number?
think they visited their bank website and it told them they were out of business or they're out of service for a period of time, and there's the phone number. Let me just call them. Why would I look up their phone number to verify that phone number is really them? Right,
exactly. And once the computer is compromised like that, it's hard to say, hey, I should be able, anything you look up on the computer now is possibly going to be illegitimate.
Right.
So maybe they are going to, maybe in the next version they might replace all the phone numbers with this illegitimate one.
Right.
So even that's not a good way to get around this fake phone number.
Yeah, one of the things that I always told people, told my parents, and that never call the toll-free number that gets left on your voicemail or your answering machine. Always, if they claim it's from your credit card company, look at the back of the card and call the number on there, not the one they left on the answering machine. But in this case, as you said, they're in your computer, so you can't look it up on the computer. Now, if you've got a credit card or something with that bank, you can call that number and try to get them that way. But yeah, this is a little more insidious even than the old phone calls that used to get claiming there was suspicious activity on your credit card or whatever.
Right, where they called you directly. Right.
It's pretty scary. I suspect it's also very targeted. I don't know how many how big this operation is or how many people they're able to target, but you think they'd have a pretty good success rate. Once they get you with the spearfish and the malware, and now you have the phone number and you're already calling, you're probably going to be a victim of this.
Right.
There's probably a very good return for the bad guys.
I wonder if you could track these guys through the call centers they're using. Either they've got their own small gang of guys doing it, or they've contracted out to a third party.
Right. Yeah.
I kind of wonder how many. You've got call centers like when you have those Windows IT scams where they say, "I call from Microsoft and you've got an infection." I've often wondered if they're actually the people who are doing it believe in what they're doing, or they're not knowledgeable enough to know that they're scamming somebody.
Right. I guess it would be hard to justify that you're transferring funds out of this person. I don't know exactly how it works, but yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I've seen some YouTube videos where people post the scams kind of in action, and it seems like the people who are doing it kind of know that they're doing something, that they're trying to trick the people.
So if somebody says you're trying to scam me, they'll get like mad at you. Or
Yeah,
something
they'll
like
get
that?
mad at you. I think in one case I saw on YouTube, somebody was saying, "Okay, I found you out. You're trying to scam me," and he was like, "Oh well, you should pay me because you don't know what I did to your computer," and things like that. So some of these guys do know what they're doing, and I'm pretty sure whoever you're calling knows what they're doing.
Okay.
I doubt that they're not fully, not complicit. They're probably very complicit. I don't know how widespread this is or what kind of banks it targets, but definitely reading this paper will give you some background information. And there's a PDF that goes along with it that has some indicators, IP addresses, and domain names that people can look for on their network to see if they're infected with this, with this specific version of this malware.
All right, great, thanks. Just as an aside as well, I know that this Dyre family of malware, it's kind of been around for a little while at least, and I see a lot of chatter on some of the industry sharing threat intelligence groups about Dyre and indicators and whatnot. So that PDF is a good start if you're a member of any of these other kind of collaborative sharing groups, especially FSISAC, which is the Financial Services ISAC. I know that they've been chattering a lot about Dyre because obviously it's targeting,
It's targeting exactly
targeting them, so to speak. They're customers, let's say, yeah. So, okay.